Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Going to spend time chatting with Charles Alvarez. He's a regular contributor here on The Price of Business with a company called Cornerstone Business Academy. By the way, our company here at The Price of Business, we have worked with Cornerstone Business Academy, and we're huge fans. Have made a profound difference in the way we've done our business, and I love his practice. I love his values, and so we bring his message to our audience every week, in fact. Charles, tell us a little more about Cornerstone Business Academy, and then introduce us to your guest today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. We work with oil and gas companies and technology companies who are having a hard time getting the business to the next level, and our clients typically achieve a $3 to $6 million increase in sales in 21 months or less without having to add a single employee. And speaking about an industry that is having a hard time finding employees is the oil and gas business, and one who is running a fantastic business is Eddie. Eddie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here.
Eddie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Well, I've been in the oil business for about a quarter century now. I've been everything from the guy at the bottom rung to the guy that runs the company. I don't know it all, but I know enough to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. So, we've had our ups and downs like anybody else. I've owned a well service company, a few oil companies, and I'm currently the president of Santa Rosa Resources. We're an oil and gas company, and we're currently getting ready to drill some wells in California. A lot of you guys have heard of the Monterey Shale. That's one of the zones we're targeting.
Yeah, let me ask you real quickly, Eddie. By the way, is there a radio going on in the background?
No, there's nothing going on in the background that I'm aware of.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Or maybe on Charles' end, I don't know. But we got a noise coming through that is a little disruptive.
I'm going to step into a conference room. My building has radio playing all around. So is that better?
I thought we were in a disco. It's kind of early for that, though. Anyway, your question, Charles.
So, Eddie, tell us about what are some of the biggest challenges facing your industry, and how is Santa Rosa Resources mitigating and or addressing those challenges?
Well, definitely the largest threat that we're facing to the industry in general, and the biggest challenge we're facing as a company, I would have to say, would be the environmental movement itself. It's a movement that was born of great ideas. I mean, they wanted to save the planet, which is a wonderful thing to do. And in the early years of the environmental movement, they made a lot of progress in that area. And I'm grateful to them. But they've outlived their usefulness, and they've now morphed into what I like to call big green. They talk about big oil. I talk about big green. And what they do is they go ahead and they shake down oil and gas companies. Your major oil companies pay them off. They donate money. They donate land. They have these money-losing green energy projects to appease the Greens. And what happens is small oil companies such as myself, and remember, most of the drilling and production on the continental United States and Alaska is done by small oil companies. Your majors control some areas such as the Kern River Valley, where 10% of the production of oil and gas comes from, near Bakersfield, California, and they also are very involved in the offshore process. But by and large, most of what's done onshore is done by small independent producers. And what happens is these green companies, these green, basically gangsters, they want to go in and control the oil and gas industry because they're big supporters of alternative energy, because they're big believers in global warming. And what they do is they'll go in and they'll tell a company, well, if you want to do something, we're going to need some kind of a donation or a donation of land. In fact, the largest owners of land in the country, besides the U.S. government, are your big green environmental groups.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. In fact, the 10 largest environmental organizations have bigger budgets than the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee combined. And so these guys are major powerhouses. Their objective has little to do with the environment anymore. In fact, what they're trying to do is to figure out how not to become obsolete. They're not unlike the labor union movement that literally destroyed the city of Detroit because it went well beyond its objective of fair wages to some crazy agenda that ended up destroying those economies, theirs, just like they're destroying the economy nationwide with the environmental movement today.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. In addition to that, specifically when it comes to energy, in fact, any kind of a play that you want to develop that upsets them in any industry, they use what's called a sue and settle method. They'll go into the EPA and they want a rule made. Well, the EPA doesn't have any scientific basis for it, so what they do is they go ahead and they sue whoever the entity is, an oil and gas company, whatnot, in court. Or they'll sue the EPA usually. They'll go after the EPA, and the EPA will settle at a court. They reimburse them for their legal fees, so it's not costing the Greens anything. The taxpayer's paying for it. Then, when the Greens get this done, now they've got a new rule by judicial fiat while circumventing Congress and without going through the usual procedures that are necessary to pass some kind of an environmental rule. And it's really hurting the economy. A lot of people have heard of the Permian Basin, and it's a large area and where a lot of oil and gas comes from in West Texas. Well, there's a critter out there called, I believe it's called a prairie chicken, and there's a sage grouse out there. These birds are on what they call the not the endangered species, but the threatened species list. They want to get them moved up to the endangered species list so they can restrict drilling out there. They've already done it on public land, which it's down about 7% production, whereas on private land it's been increasing. If it wasn't for the impediment put on the oil and gas industry by the Obama administration and their EPA, we would see a lot more production. You'd see a lot more jobs. In fact, I would say with the stranglehold the Greens are putting on the industry and the economy in general, we're losing a minimum of 2 to 3% GDP and thousands of jobs. And it's not just the Keystone Pipeline and other little things like that, which are very small. They pale into insignificance compared to the big picture. But in reality, they're putting a stranglehold on the whole economy. It's as if they put a governor on a car where, you've got a Ferrari, but you're keeping it to 55 miles an hour. And that's basically the analogy I use to describe what they're doing to the economy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Charles.
So what are you all doing in your business? Because, I think the country runs basically where the real economic power is small businesses, the independent producers. How do you go about mitigating that risk, and how do you go about growing a company such as yours in such a tough environment?
Well, what we do is we look for areas where we can drill where we're not going to incur the wrath of the environmentalists. It's more like duck and cover when the nuclear blast of the environmental movement comes rolling in. We'll go ahead and, for example, we're going to drill some wells in Colorado. It was a great project. But when we found out that the prairie chicken was going to be, they were going to move to put that on the endangered species list, we knew we were going to probably get tied up in court. We can't afford those kind of legal fees. They can, because they're going to get reimbursed by the taxpayer anyways. So we had to go somewhere where we could drill and at the same time not incur the wrath of the Greens. Now, because of the California oil industry, it's largely controlled by the majors. They really don't get too much static from the Greens, especially if you're out in an area like the Kern River Valley area. And where we're at in the Central Valley, a little bit north of that, we're not going to be doing any fracking. So we don't have that issue. There's no endangered species. And there's no groundwater to contaminate anywhere where we're at, so to speak. So we're going to be doing what's called slant drilling into formations that are at an angle. I mean, we've had to get really creative and look for areas where the Greens aren't going to come after us. If you're one of the big guys, one of the major oil companies, you can make some donations. They're going to leave you alone. And most people don't know this, but in the Kern River Valley, it's a lot of heavy oil. They've got to steam that oil out of the ground. They run the steam through a turbine, which generates electricity for not just the lease, but they sell it to the utility. The utility then uses it to power up a lot of homes in Kern, in Bakersfield area, and in the Los Angeles and Orange County area. And what this does is it gives these people out there cheaper utility bills. You're going to pay less for utilities in Orange County and Los Angeles for your electricity than you would, say, in Riverside or San Bernardino County, because they're getting this at a discount price. And as everybody knows, your Los Angeles area is a major Democrat stronghold. So it's just politics as usual, making everybody happy. But we've had to really look far and wide for places where we can go, where not only can we find oil, but we can avoid having to deal with these people because, again, they've got unlimited resources because it's basically coming from the taxpayer, and it's a distinct advantage for them. So we basically had to get very creative, which is what small businesses have to do anyways. It's just one more hurdle we have to clear.
Eddie, I got to wrap it up. Eddie Arruda, he is founder and president of Santa Rosa Resources. He is the guest today of Charles Alvarez with Cornerstone Business Academy, cornerstonebusinessacademy.com. You can reach Eddie at santarosaresources.com. Great segment. I tell you, I've been saying for years, probably for 20, in fact, now, that this agenda of the environmental movement has nothing to do with the environment any longer. It has to do with control. It entirely has to do with control and job preservation for the activists behind it. And it's such a tragedy, and it's done at the expense of average Americans who would love to be able to have lower gas prices and also be able to have jobs. And it's incredible. It's really incredible. And to think it's being done with the taxpayer dollars of those average Americans really is an economic horror story. And, Eddie, I appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure being on your show.
You bet. Charles, great guest.
Absolutely. Eddie, definitely want you on the show again. You were fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. When we come back, much more for you. We want to remind you the best content here shows up over there at usareview.com. I am Kevin Price. This is The Price of Business.